Hi everyone, a very good morning to all of you. Please let me know in the comment section whether audio and video is clear or not. Good morning, Hema. Good morning, Sureka. I hope all of you are doing well. I welcome you all to the live mint analysis that I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. So I bring in the important news articles from the newspaper. We try to discuss the static portion of it. We try to do a few MCQs uh, at the end of the class as well, right? Before I begin, if you want to download this YouTube class PDF, you can do it from the Oliveboard app. Just go to the courses section. There's going to be a separate YouTube class PDFs folder. वहाँ से you can download the PDF. All right. Now let's take a look at what we are going to cover today. Good morning, Tanmay. All clear? All right. Good morning, Bhakti. ठीक है. Chalo, first of all, we're going to talk about how center weighs loan guarantee for MFIs, microfinance institutions. For NBFC microfinance institutions, government is coming up with a loan guarantee scheme. Okay, we're going to see what the guarantee scheme means and what this particular scheme would mean for the microfinance institutions, right? Then we're going to talk about how domestic steel makers raise their prices after safeguard duty. So we're going to understand what is the meaning of safeguard duty and why the safeguard duty is being levied on steel prices, right? Then India's growth is seen at 6.6%. This is an important news. Sometimes, ratings related questions can be asked in the examination, and MCQ can be formed from here. Good morning, Akanksha. Good morning, Tanishk. Achha, that was Tanmay. Okay, Tanmay. Good morning. Mandatory hallmarking for silver eyed. So, abhi tak we usually talk about hallmarking for gold. But now, even for silver, we are, eyeing for hallmarking. है ना? Hallmarking basically to check the purity of the metal उसके लिए होता है ना. Then why Indian firms often challenge the drug patents, इससे related news है. अब drug patents क्या है? Basically we are going to understand what patents mean, what intellectual property rights are, and क्यों Indian जो firms हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा challenge करती हैं drug patents को. ठीक है. Then SEBI's new market data timelines that we're going to talk about. At last we have a few fact based news and we're going to do some MCQs. ठीक है. चलिए. Also, I'm sharing my Telegram handle with all of you over here. If you guys want to connect with me beyond these sessions, then Mannat Educator is my Telegram handle. You can connect with me over there. Fine? Chalo. Now, first important article over here is that Center wins loan guarantee for microfinance institutions. ठीक है. This is a credit guarantee scheme. What is the meaning of credit guarantee scheme? What is the meaning of credit guarantee that we need to understand first of all. कि credit guarantee का मतलब क्या है देखो. अब क्या है ना, माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशंस यूजुअली स्मॉल लोन्स प्रोवाइड करते हैं. दे प्रोवाइड व्हाट? दे प्रोवाइड स्मॉल लोन्स. अब एट द माइक्रो लेवल, एंड ये मतलब कि हम ऐसे लोगों को लोन्स प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं विच आर वेरी वेरी लेस इन अमाउंट. But the risk of default, the risk of default is quite high. The risk of default is quite high. मतलब अगर हम इनको loans provide करते हैं, there is a very very risky factor there that we might not get the money back. So usually what happens is that banks or institutions, they they refrain from lending to certain areas. वो उन्हें lend नहीं करते हैं. They don't lend the loans to certain areas, certain people, because of which we are not able to focus on inclusive growth, or you can say financial inclusion. So what is the government saying over here is that we are going to bring in a credit guarantee scheme, that please you go and provide loans to the people, you go and provide small loans, don't worry if there is any default, that risk we are going to share. Under this credit guarantee scheme, any default risk will be shared. तो आप टेंशन ना लो, हम आधा या फिर मे बी उससे ज्यादा वी आर गोइंग टू गिव यू दैट मनी इन केस दे डिफॉल्ट. Right, so this is what is this news about. Good morning, Souvik. So government is considering what? A credit guarantee scheme. इससे क्या है that these microfinance institutions they will be able to borrow from banks and non-bank lenders with lower perceived risk. So what happens is that these microfinance institutions, what did I say? NBFC microfinance institutions. NBFC MFIs. Now what we know is NBFCs they do not accept deposits, है ना? Their major source, their major source of loan or income is from the banks, है ना? Banks. But these banks say that yeah, these microfinance institutions they provide loans to the lowermost sections of the society. They provide micro loans, and a lot of default happens on these loans. So what was happening was that these banks were not lending to these MFIs for onward lending. They were not lending to these MFIs for micro loans. But now government has brought in a credit guarantee scheme. Credit guarantee scheme for whom? Here you have to make sure credit guarantee scheme for these banks who lend to the microfinance institutions which further lend to the people. So credit guarantee scheme is for these banks, and this will be operated by National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company Limited, NCGTC. This company is going to operate this thing. Fine. So the scheme aims to cover lending risks beyond borrowers control. अब यहाँ पे lending risks हैं इनके पास. These microfinance institutions they also have lending risks, and उनसे ज़्यादा these banks have lending risks because ये banks ही हैं जो ये NBFCs को fund करते हैं, है ना? These banks fund these microfinance institutions. So they used to not direct their funds only over here, which was a hindrance for inclusive growth, which was a hindrance uh, uh, for financial inclusion. Yes, yes, this can be considered as refinancing. Yes, this is called refinancing, or you can say use the word onward lending or on lending, है ना? ठीक है. So microfinance loan book has shrunk versus the pre covid levels. तो microfinance ना provide ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, which is creating a hindrance at the lowermost level. So the final decision is going to be made in the next union budget. Next year के union budget में it is going to be made. But here we have the news. Here I wanted to explain you what credit guarantee means. Credit guarantee here is provided to whom? It is provided to large banks or non-bank lenders which lend to the NBFC microfinance institutions. And these NBFC microfinance institutions they further lend to the small borrowers or the customers. But they can default. If customers default, then these NBFCs will default. If these NBFCs default, then government is bringing up with a credit guarantee scheme ki don't worry, we will cover it up for you. I hope you have understood this particular thing. So microfinance is very important because it provides credit access to low income households, which is very important for financial inclusion. ठीक है? And NBFCs NBFC MFIs they depend heavily on bank funding for on lending. I hope the meaning of on lending is clear to all of you. है ना? And after COVID and regulatory tightening by RBI brings in regulatory tightening, loan collection slowed, credit costs rose, banks became risk averse, because of which their microfinance loan portfolio was shrinking, and that is why we started focusing on this particular scheme. So microfinance institutions, I hope it is clear, these are they provide small ticket loans to women, self-help groups, rural low-income borrowers, micro enterprises. And NBFC MFIs, they are regulated by RBI. You should know that NBFC MFIs are regulated by RBI. They cannot accept deposits, just like all NBFCs, they cannot accept deposits. And they rely on what? From where do they get their funding? Bank borrowings and market debt. ठीक है? Credit guarantee scheme, I hope you know that it is for default. The risk default which is there, we share the default risk in that case, है ना? We have NCGTC. It is the government owned guarantee manager. So you should know about this company also. This is the government owned guarantee manager. ये already जो CGT MSE है, MSME guarantee, and ECGC like export guarantee scheme extensions and government schemes like ECLGS, तो वो already credit guarantee schemes को cover up करता है, and so we have this NCGTC which is also going to cover this credit guarantee scheme. Fine. So why microfinance is important? Because it supports financial inclusion, it helps in women empowerment, it helps in rural household stability, small business growth. This is the importance of microfinance institutions. ठीक है? ठीक है, so you can get a question related to microfinance. And a microfinance is an important topic from your exam point of view. You can get a descriptive question from this particular topic. ठीक है? शरद ऐसा तो नहीं है. Yes, public is inclined towards equity, not exactly towards equity. Banks are getting enough deposits. The deposit growth this year is quite good. And now check out the facts. Deposit growth is good. Banks receive. There are many ways of banks' income also. They don't only receive the deposits. Not only through deposits do they have their income. They provide other banking services also like factoring. And now they provide like bills of discounting bills of exchange. Then they provide other services also, merchanting services and all. And now they act as merchant banks and also they earn interest also. So banks have different ways of earning, है ना? It is not just the deposit growth. Deposit growth is quite good also. It's not that deposit growth is not good, है ना? Plus then banks are capitalized also. RBI also puts in a lot of measures so that banks have a good enough deposit growth. So that banks receive good deposits. RBI also puts in efforts. So it's not like banks do not have money. And equity may only the risk takers people, then they usually put their money in equity. Otherwise banks offer a lot of services, other services as well. ठीक है, there are other ways for banks to earn. ठीक है, तो वो है यहाँ पे. And then further they fund the NBFCs also. I hope this is clear. Good morning Vaibhav. Chalo, next news is that domestic steel makers raise prices after safeguard duty. अच्छा, when is the safeguard duty levied? Let's understand what is the meaning of safeguard duty. यहाँ पे यूज है safeguard duty. देखो, duty means tax or tariff kind of, ठीक है, उसको बोलते हैं duty. Safeguard duty, you can see the word here, safe, है ना? Safe word is used here. That means we are trying to protect our domestic steel makers. What we are doing is we are trying to protect our domestic steel makers. For that, government has put a safeguard duty on what? On imports. So when you put a duty or a tax on the imports to protect the domestic makers or the domestic industries, that is known as a safeguard duty. So government has imposed a safeguard duty on steel imports. See, there are two types of steel over here that we are talking about. One is your HRC, which is your hot rolled coil, and the other one is your cold rolled coil. ठीक है? So on both of these, safeguard duty has been raised, or domestic steel makers, they have raised their prices by 2 to 4%. अब issue क्या हो रहा था ना? When we were importing from outside, it was hurting the domestic companies, it was hurting the domestic industries. So now after putting the duty, these domestic industries could also raise their prices and become profitable. ठीक है, so यहाँ पे domestic steel makers, they raised price for HRC and CRC by 2 to 4% so that they can also earn some profit. And this was possible how? This was possible why? Because the government has imposed safeguard duty on the imports. So imports are also expensive now. So the domestic industries, they could also raise their prices. Rebar prices also increased by 3 to 6%. Safeguard duty will apply for how many years? 3 years. Please remember these details. Sometimes in the MCQs they can directly ask. Maybe they can make some statement based questions and they can ask you. ठीक है? Fine. So how much safeguard duty will be applied? 12% in the first year, 8% in the second year, and 4% in the third year. ये details you have to learn and remember. price hikes are expected to support steelmaker profitability because their profitability can also increase now, है ना? And because there is overcapacity, there is cost pressure amongst these domestic steel makers. Fine, ठीक है. Now here are some important facts again. India is the second largest steel producer. ठीक है? So India is what? The second largest producer of steel. But what are the problems? What are the problems that we are facing? That there are rising imports from China, Japan, Korea. तो हम imports काफी ज़्यादा कर रहे हैं from countries like China, Japan, Korea. So we are becoming dependent on imports. We are second largest steel producer and we are being dependent. Plus there is over capacity, ज़्यादा capacity है, but prices are weak because we are importing. ठीक है, and raw materials are also costly. So these safeguard duties, these will be used, when surge in imports hurts domestic producers. क्या बोला यहाँ पे? जो domestic producers हैं, when they start suffering from the imports, then what we do is we try to curb the imports and put safeguard duty on these imports. It's like a tax. ताकि we can protect the domestic industry so that we can prevent dumping like effects. What is the meaning of dumping? Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of dumping? A word is used here, dumping. And we need to stabilize the prices and margins. For that we have safeguard duties. Can anybody tell me what is the meaning of dumping here? And in 2015 to 17, when Chinese dumping had increased a lot, in that case also we had put in safeguard duties. Okay, so the safeguard duty is WTO compatible, so we can put in safeguard duties, okay, as a trade remedy. And this is a part of your agreement on safeguards under your WTO. Fine, so if imports cause serious injury, then we can levy this. Okay. Now there is a difference between safeguard duty. There's a difference between safeguard duty and anti-dumping duty. Anti-dumping duty. Let's try and understand this thing. This is the static concept. Low quality products are dumped in selling the product less than the domestic price. Dekho, what happens during dumping is, for example, this is your domestic country A, so this is India. This is your the other foreign country, which is say China. So China say produces excess of a commodity. What does China do is, it is going to act like a monopolist. It is going to act like a monopolist in its own country, but it is going to act like a perfect competitive firm in India. What does it mean? That it is going to charge a higher price for its own product inside the domestic economy, but it is going to charge a very low price. It is going to charge a very low price. It is going to charge a very low price in India for that product. So what is it trying to do is, it is trying to dump that product in India. Now what was happening this year also? When Trump imposed tariffs on China, China was resorting to other countries and especially India. So there was this threat that China will dump the products to India because nobody was buying, or you can say US was not buying China's products. So at a lower price, it would dump in India, which would mean that prices of Chinese products will be lower. Prices of Chinese products will be lower for the people in India, which is going to create a hindrance, which is going to create a problem for whom? For the domestic manufacturers, for the domestic industries. Okay, so what you do is, you act like in your own domestic country, you charge a higher price, and in the other countries, you charge a very low price to dump all the commodities, which puts a negative impact on the foreign country, like it puts a negative impact on India in this case. So to protect your country from dumping and all, that is why also safeguard duty is levied. But there's a difference between safeguard duty and anti-dumping duty. Safeguard duty, if safeguard is that we are trying to keep our economy or our domestic producers on a safer side, when we know, when we anticipate and we see that these are hurting our imports. Anti-dumping duty is specially to counter dumping, कि अभी specifically case by case basis पे dumping is happening. Right now dumping is happening, so we put an anti-dumping duty. In this case, in case of anti-dumping duty na, we need proper proof that yes, that country is dumping. ठीक है, we need a proper proof that yes, this country or this China is dumping its commodities in our country, so we have to provide a proof. ठीक है, fine. And this is also case by case basis. This is also done case by case basis. But safeguard duty is when we are seeing from long period of time that our economy is being hurt by these imports. In that case, we do not require proof of dumping, and we can apply it to any kind of exporting country. है ना? And it is going to be temporary and progressively reduced. The safeguard duty will over a period of time it is going to be reduced. ठीक है? So I hope that anti-dumping duty and safeguard duty may majorly this difference is that in anti-dumping duty you have to provide a proof that yes, dumping is happening. ठीक है? So there are types of steel products: hot rolled coil and cold rolled coil. This HRC is used in pipes, construction machinery, and CRC is used in autos, furniture, appliances. And rebar is also a type of steel which is used in construction and infrastructure. ठीक है? Okay, so Sharat is asking that, ma'am, why India is delaying trade agreement with US? India is not delaying trade agreement with US. Agreement is agreement has to be mutually considered between two countries. So if India and US are, considering, and they're not able to finalize a trade agreement, is because they're not agreeing with each other. When they come into an agreement which is mutually beneficial, only then only then the agreement will be there, है ना? Plus US is not happy with India as of now. Why is US not happy with India? Abhi, there was this news in last your live mint analysis that I was taking up, that US is threatening to impose more tariffs on India. Why? Because India is buying oil from Russia despite US sanctions, despite US telling the country to not buy or import oil from Russia. India is still doing that. Why? Because we do not take pressure from any particular country. We have our own sovereignty, and we do not take any pressure from any country. So that is India's neutral stance. So India is taking up oil from Russia because India is getting it at a discounted price, and national security is more important than any other thing over here, है ना? So India is trying to take loan this oil from Russia. US is not liking it. So if you until and unless US is going to be satisfied or India is going to be satisfied, an agreement cannot be taken up. Okay, is that clear, Sharat? I hope this is clear. So agreement एक mutual decision रहता है, and only when both the parties are satisfied will an agreement be brought in. हाँ, will an agreement be made? Plus US right now is unhappy. I hope that this is clear to all of you. Sharat, is it clear? Please let me know. Fine? ठीक है? चलो. Let's move on to the next news. India's growth seen at 6.6% in financial year 27 according to DNB. We are not yet self-reliant. Of course, we are not self-reliant as of now, but our motive is to become self-reliant. And Sharat, I don't understand why you are connecting this with India and US agreement. है ना, India and US agreement. Are you saying that we are not agreeing to US, we should agree to US because we are not yet self-reliant like that? That's not possible because India's rules, India's values are quite different. India's foreign policy is quite different. And we do not really take any sides. We have this non-aligned policy. We follow this non-alignment policy where we do not align with one particular country or one particular group of countries. Our focus is a very diplomatic. We always focus on a diplomatic stance. Our stance is always diplomatic in nature. We try to keep a balance for everything, and most important is our national security, our national sovereignty, our national you can say national protection is more important. And oil, if we are getting at a discounted price, oil is something that we import a lot. We need oil for our survival. Oil is required for our survival. And in order to fill our strategic petroleum reserves. I hope you guys know what are strategic. पेट्रोलियम रिजर्व्स, ये कुछ रिजर्व्स हैं जहां पे हम अपना ऑयल स्टोर करके रखते हैं फॉर अनप्रेसिडेंटेड सिचुएशंस। ठीक है, फॉर अनप्रेसिडेंटेड सिचुएशंस वी स्टोर ऑयल एज अ बफर स्टॉक काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग। ठीक है, so we need to fulfill these strategic petroleum reserves for our oil security, for our energy security. And that is the reason why we do not align with any country. That is the reason, because our national sovereignty, integrity, national security is above anything. Okay, I hope this is clear, Sharat. Fine. Chalo, so this news is that India's growth seen at 6.6% in financial year 27. So DNB projects India's GDP growth at approximately 6.6%. Such kind of MCQ can be asked in the exam directly. This can be stated. ठीक है, सो फाइनेंशियल ईयर 27 इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू बी स्टेबल, और यहाँ पे जो हमारी ग्रोथ रहेगी इट इज गोइंग टू बी एडेड बाय कंजम्पशन, पब्लिक इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड रिवाइवल इन प्राइवेट कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट इज फोकसिंग ऑन प्राइवेट कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. पब्लिक कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर तो इज गुड, but now how this public capital expenditure can crowd in private investment or can help increase private capital expenditure, so the government is working on this as well. So the drivers for next year, financial year 27, drivers of growth are going to be consumption, है ना, investment, and you can say private capital expenditure as well. ठीक है, fine. Government spending could reach 4% of GDP in financial year 27. Current financial year growth estimates is 7.4%. Consumption is supported by GST rationalization and income tax relief. I hope you know that this year GST rates has also been rationalized and income tax has also been rationalized, which is going to really boost the consumption spending. What happens when taxes are reduced? When taxes are reduced, then there is more disposable income available with the people. Disposable income मतलब जो dispose कर सकते हैं लोग to which they can use for spending purpose. So if their disposable income increases, that means their purchasing power increases. If their purchasing power increases, that means their consumption, investment, spending can increase. And we know that aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus G plus net exports. So if your consumption and investment spending increase, your aggregate demand is going to increase, your GDP is going to increase, and your economic growth will also increase. ठीक है, fine. India is one of the fastest growing major economies. Even despite the global uncertainties like geopolitical tensions, trade disruptions, inflation risks, still India has really become resilient and has performed well. है ना, our domestic macro stability, fiscal support, everything is strong. Public capital expenditure is a major driver. Post COVID, public capital expenditure काफी ज़्यादा अच्छा हुआ है, and manufacturing and services are performing quite well. है ना, अगर मैं जीडीपी ग्रोथ प्रोजेक्शंस की बात करूं तो जो फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग एस्टिमेट्स हैं दे आर क्वाइट गुड. कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर इज क्वाइट हाई व्हिच इज गोइंग टू बूस्ट प्रोडक्टिविटी, जॉब्स, प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट आल्सो. है ना, कंजम्पशन लेड ग्रो, इंडियाज कंजम्पशन शेयर इज अप्रोक्सीमेटली 58 to 60% ऑफ जीडीपी. तो उसके लिए हम टैक्स कट्स लेकर आए, जीएसटी रैशनलाइजेशन, इनकम सपोर्ट, क्रेडिट एक्सेस. इट इज गोइंग टू फोकस ऑन मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी एज वेल. ठीक है, देन मैंडेटरी हॉल मार्किंग फॉर सिल्वर इज आई. तो हॉल मार्किंग का मतलब क्या है? व्हाट इज अ हॉल मार्क? टू चेक द प्योरिटी ऑफ द मेटल, हॉल मार्किंग इज डन. कि हॉल मार्किंग इज बेसिकली कि आप उस स्टैंडर्ड को मीट कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे. सो इफ देयर इज एनी मेटल विद अ हॉल मार्क, तो गोल्ड भी बोलते हैं ना, बाय गोल्ड विद अ हॉल मार्क, दैट मीन्स इट इज ट्राइड, टेस्टेड एंड इट इज मीटिंग अप विद द रिक्वायर्ड स्टैंडर्ड्स. So now we know that silver की demand is increasing, silver prices are skyrocketing, silver's demand, industrial demand is very very high. So it's better, and when the demand of something is very high and there is supply constraint, supply is less, demand is more, in that case what happens is adulteration, and uh, uh, all of these things start happening, है ना. People start focusing on impure kind of metals and all. To check the purity, here we are talking about mandatory hallmarking for silver as well. So there's first we're going to start off with a pilot project in a few districts. The purpose is basically you want to verify the purity and authenticity so that we can curb counterfeit silver, nakli silver ko we want to counter. So initially it is going to be on a voluntary basis. Hallmarking is going to be on a voluntary basis, and over a period of time we are going to make it mandatory. ठीक है, फ्रॉम सितंबर 2026. ठीक है, फ्रॉम सितंबर 2025, दिस ईयर जो 2025 में सितंबर था तब से इसको हमने मैंडेटरी करने की बात की है. लेट्स सी हाउ इट इज गोइंग टू गो. सिल्वर आर्टिकल्स मस्ट कैरी अ हॉलमार्क यूनिक आईडी. सो दिस इज अ, जैसे वी हैव यूनिक आईडीज फॉर एवरीथिंग, दिस इज देयर इज गोइंग टू बी अ हॉलमार्क यूनिक आईडी आल्सो फॉर एवरी थिंग. ठीक है. And over 2.3 million silver items have been hallmarked as of December 2025. ठीक है. सो इंडिया इज अ मेजर कंज्यूमर ऑफ बोथ गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर, है ना. मैंडेटरी हॉलमार्किंग फॉर गोल्ड had begun earlier, है ना. hallmarking of gold तो is happening already, but silver demand has surged because of its investment use, because of its industrial applications, because of, people are substituting gold for silver. Why? Because gold prices are increasing a lot. Counterfeit silver jewelry poses consumer risk also. Silver prices rose 150% plus in 2025. ठीक है. हॉल मार्किंग कहाँ से होती है? इट इज डन बाय ब्यूरो ऑफ इंडियन स्टैंडर्ड्स. यू शुड नो मेटल प्योरिटी के लिए टू चेक द स्टैंडर्ड्स एंड ऑल. हमारा जो ये HUID रहता है, हॉलमार्क यूनिक आइडेंटिफिकेशन, दिस इज अ 6 digit कोड. दिस इज अ 6 digit alphanumeric code wherein we can, through this code we can trace in the BIS care app. ब्यूरो ऑफ इंडियन स्टैंडर्ड्स तो नेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स बॉडी ऑफ इंडिया है. ठीक है. आई होप दिस इज क्लियर. Why Indian firms often challenge drug patents? अब यहाँ पे हम किसकी बात कर रहे हैं? Patents की बात कर रहे हैं for drugs. See, what happens is, if a company, or if if a big company or a pharma company, if it is going to make a drug, or you can say a medicine, here we are talking about a medicine. ठीक है. Drug in the form of medicines. ठीक है. तो जो ये pharma companies हैं, which make drugs, which makes medicines, which are very unique, or they have made it for the first time. For example, they make a cancer drug which is not yet made, है ना, which is not yet made as of now, है ना. So what happens is that government, they try to protect, try to protect this intellectual property. They try to protect this intellectual property of these companies. Why? Because to make that drug, there have been years of R&D investment. They have put in so much of money, so much of time, so much of effort. So this becomes their intellectual property. They have discovered this cancer drug out of after so much of effort, है ना. So to protect this intellectual property of these companies, government provides protection. Government provides patents. Patents can be for, say, mostly they're from for 20 years. Ki 20 years tak nobody is going to produce this product. This formula will not be available at the generic level. Ab dekho, if there is only one company which is going to make that drug, that means the prices of that drug are also going to be high. That means at the at the affordability level, this becomes a problem. Affordability is weak. तो एक होते हैं स्पेशल ड्रग्स लाइक दीज विच आर प्रोटेक्टेड थ्रू पेटेंट्स. एक होते हैं जेनेरिक ड्रग्स. जेनेरिक ड्रग्स आर बेसिकली अ कॉपी कैट वर्जन ऑफ दी स्पेशल ड्रग्स, है ना. इन ड्रग्स का एक कॉपी कैट वर्जन इज जेनेरिक ड्रग्स विच आर अफोर्डेबल, है ना, विच आर अफोर्डेबल एंड वेरी इजी फॉर द कॉमन मैन टू बाय. इफ आई टॉक अबाउट इंडिया, अब यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन क्या है कि इंडिया क्यों इन ड्रग पेटेंट्स को चैलेंज करता है? इज बिकॉज इंडिया majorly produces generic drugs. Majorly India generic drugs के अंदर इंडिया की मास्टरी है. And these MNCs और these big pharma companies, ये अपने patents को ना extend करते रहते. They keep extending their patents. How? What they'll do is they're going to bring in modern minor modifications in their drug. थोड़े उसे modify कर दिया, और and then they claim it कि अच्छा this is तो a new product, so again the patent has to be extended. So usually what they do is they keep extending, they get their patents extended again and again. So there's this problem of affordability for the masses. So that is why India challenges these companies which have patents and which focus on extending their patents. अब जो लोग ये काम करते हैं ना, just bringing in modifications a little bit in the drug and then asking for extension of patent, this is known as evergreening of patents. This is known as evergreening of patents. So यहाँ पे, so what is the basic scenario over here? These pharma companies, when they make a new drug, बहुत सारी मेहनत लगती है उसमें, R&D, मनी, टाइम, एफर्ट. So what the government tries to protect them, कि ठीक है, for 20 years you have the patent, you have the exclusive responsibility of producing this drug, nobody else can bring it. But after 20 years this is going to be a generic drug, everybody can produce it. But India, why India challenges it is because of this situation like evergreening of patents, कि ये affordability का issue है. And India is a major generic drug producer. Fine. So यहाँ पे Indian generic drug companies, they challenge patents of these global pharma innovators. Objective क्या है? That they get objective क्या है for challenging these global pharma innovators, so that they can get market access and they can improve the affordability for the Indian patients. ठीक है. केसेस जैसे SMA, कैंसर, वेट लॉस जो ड्रग्स हैं, इससे रिलेटेड काफी ज्यादा केसेस आ रहे हैं. इंडियन कोर्ट्स जो क्या है, दे बैलेंस आईपी प्रोटेक्शन विद पब्लिक हेल्थ इंटरेस्ट. देखो, आईपी प्रोटेक्शन इज आल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट, because if people are not protected, agar IP protection, intellectual property protection is not there, then nobody is going to put effort in R&D, nobody is going to focus on bringing in a new drug, nobody is going to put in that money and effort कि हमें पता है कि सब लोग ही बनाने लग जाएंगे, मुझे तो प्रॉफिट कुछ नहीं होगा, है ना. So we have to protect this also, but we have to also focus on public health interest. And mostly जो consumers है, they benefit from generics only if the generic drug companies win. ठीक है. So what happens is that these pharma patents, they grant temporary monopoly to the innovators, है ना. And India is a global hub for generic medicines and we supply cheap drugs, है ना, to India and 150 plus countries. Now the problem is between these innovator firms, है ना, because their motive is कि patents के through they can recover, they can earn profits also, and they can recover the entire cost that they have put in R&D and all, है ना. Generic firms, they focus on affordability. तो यहाँ पे लीगल बैटल्स रहते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ एवरग्रीनिंग, कि ये लोग एक्सटेंड करवाते रहते हैं, है ना. दीज बिग इनोवेटर्स, दे कीप एक्सटेंडिंग द पेटेंट्स एंड ऑल by making certain small changes. Patent validity 20 साल तक है, बहुत ज्यादा है. पब्लिक हेल्थ नेसेसिटी भी है, so we need to focus on public health and affordability as well. ठीक है. So these are the basic key concepts you can revise. I've already explained you all of these, you can revise this over here. ठीक है. Why SEBI's new market data timeline matters. अब यहाँ पे कौन से टाइमलाइन की बात हो रही है, that we're going to say. ठीक है. SEBI ने क्या किया है, अब देखो, what happens is that when SEBI brings in any kind of change is brought in related to market, related to any circular, that has to be made public, or for education purpose it has to be made public. Yes, there are many companies, देखो, who practices evergreening strategy to extend patent life by minor modifications. Who is going to do evergreening? The innovator firms. The innovator firms which bring in, which invest in R&D, which have innovated that drug. So mostly it is the global pharma companies, like Pfizer and all, है ना. They basically do this evergreening. India में most companies are generic, they produce generic medicines only. Okay, Tanmay? You mean pharma के अलावा और industries? हाँ, anyone can practice evergreening ना, anyone can practice evergreening if it is possible. Okay, Tanmay? हाँ, तो I was talking about this SEBI related change. So if SEBI brings in any change, and it has to be made public, and it has to be made public. The information has to be shared with the people for education purposes and all. So now SEBI has proposed a uniform 30-day timeline. Now what happens is when SEBI has made certain changes, there is a time lag in between कि कब हम public करेंगे information को. So when are we going to public or make the information public for education purposes? Now that time lag has become uniform. Pehle there was ambiguity because in the May 2024 circular it was written that there is only going to be one day lag. And then in Jan 2025 circular it was written that there is going to be a 3 month lag. So there was ambiguity कि भाई 1 day lag होगा या 3 month lag होगा. So now SEBI is eyeing कि हम इसको एक 30-day time lag लेकर आएंगे. 30-day time lag in the sense कि अभी हम कोई change लेकर आए, within 30 days it has to be made public, the information has to be made public. ठीक है. Fine. So the objective is basically we want to reduce misuse of any kind of information. We need to maintain investor protection and ensure that data consistency is there. So real time data, it can be misused for any kind of advisory services and all, unauthorized advisory, speculative trading, unregistered research services. So there was ambiguity कि कैसे information is going to be made public, and that is why now we are focusing on bringing in a uniform time lag. ठीक है? Good morning, Ayushi. I hope that these important news are clear to all of you. Then we have a few fact based news. Let's cover it. Average crude import cost falls below $60 per barrel. Excuse me. To a 5-year low. So, what we are saying is that the crude oil that we import, the crude oil that we import, it has reduced. ठीक है? Simple. It has become even less than $60 per barrel. It was around usually in 70s and 80s के बीच में रहता था पहले, है ना? Sometimes even 90s when we were importing. Now, what is going to be the benefit of this here? We are saying that our import of crude oil, obviously import of crude oil will increase because crude oil अब सस्ता हो गया है. It has become cheap now as compared to the previous scenario. That means our import bill will also reduce. है ना? Our bill will also reduce. If import bill is going to reduce, that means our imports will will be less than our exports, or you can say our trade deficit will improve. Our trade deficit will improve, है ना? So our current account deficit will improve, our BOP will be better. So our external position is going to be better, which is a very good thing for our economy. ठीक है? We will be able to utilize that extra money somewhere else. We will have good amount of reserves as well. So this is the benefit of this. ठीक है? So if crude oil prices are reduced, how is it going to benefit our country? Our deficit, our trade deficit, current account deficit is going to be reduced. This is the major benefit. ठीक है? So this is the lowest in 5 years. $60 per barrel से भी कम हो गया है. It dipped to $59.29 per barrel on 5th Jan. ठीक है? And despite the geopolitical issues, we are having a fall in the prices. Why? Because we are importing from Russia also, है ना? So we have saved around $11 billion from these lower prices, and our imports also rose 2.44%. ठीक है? So India, why is it important? Because crude oil is a major import factor in our country, है ना? We import approximately 88% of crude oil. We import from outside. So this is going to, if these prices fall, it is going to impact, or it is going to reduce our current account deficit. It is going to control inflation. It is going to control fuel prices. ठीक है? If oil prices are reduced, then it is going to control our inflation also. It is going to control our current account deficit. It is going to reduce our import bill. Our input costs will be reduced. Consumer inflation transmission will be there. Okay, so we basically we import weighted we how do we calculate the price of oil inside of the country? हम Middle East से भी bring in this this sour crude oil we bring in from Middle East, and sweet crude oil from West Africa. Based on that, we import from outside. These are imported by India, and based on that, our Indian basket of crude oil is obtained. ठीक है? If prices are less, it is going to reduce our import bill. It is going to reduce our current account deficit. ठीक है? So because of less prices of crude oil, it is going to improve our current account deficit. It is going to help in controlling inflation. तीसरी चीज, if crude oil prices are reduced, that means the input cost of raw material जहाँ पे oil is used as input, that is going to reduce. If that is going to reduce, then final price of the product will also reduce, which is going to be beneficial for the customers. ठीक है? We have this PPAC, Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell, which tracks petroleum imports, pricing and consumption. ठीक है? And usually this Brent crude oil is the global benchmark to decide the prices of crude oil. WTI is the US benchmark, and Indian basket is, we basically talk about India specific mix, wherein how do we calculate sour from Middle East and sweet from West Africa. ठीक है? Fine. Then what the union budget must do to get private capex going on. See, right now what is the scenario in India is that we are focusing on public capital expenditure. Our public capital expenditure is quite high. So this is a very good thing. This is a productive expenditure, you can say. This is a productive expenditure because it is going to give us returns in the future. But public capital expenditure is not enough. If you want to become a Viksit Bharat by the year 2047, if you want to become a Viksit Bharat by the year 2047, it is going to be very important for us to also mobilize private money and private capital expenditure also. We have to focus on that as well. So this article aims to address this, that what can this union budget do so that private capital expenditure can also increase. Okay, fine. So public expenditure, public capex, it hit 11 trillion rupees, which is the highest share in GDP. So capex, according to the public capital expenditure has increased, but private capex is still weak. We need to bring in fresh private capex, because this reduced to around 4.89 trillion rupees. RBI is projecting 21.5% rise in private corporate capex, especially in renewables, transport. Private firms demand long-term policy certainty in taxes, regulation, tariffs, and input costs. So, what is the major problem? Why private sector is not investing in capital expenditure is because there is long-term policy uncertainty, taxes or regulation, tariffs, input. इन सब चीजों के बारे में they want proper long-term policy certainty, है ना? So union budget should bring in a proper tax design, credit discipline, investment incentives for the private capital expenditure. ठीक है? There is this word over here used, crowding in of private investment. There are two words, crowding in of private investment and crowding out of or crowding out of private investment. There are two words over here. Let's try and understand the meaning of this. See, what happens is when government tries to increase its expenditure, government is also going to use some money. Ab sara ka sara money to cannot be utilized from the revenue, so what does government do? It tries to borrow from the people. It tries to borrow from the public only. तो जिस pool से private companies or private sector is going to borrow, from the same pool the government also borrows money and starts doing the expenditure. So when government is also going to use money from the same pool of money which is available for the private sector, that means for the private sector, the money is less. Money available for the private sector becomes less. That is why their investment reduces. Such kind of a situation is known as crowding out. When because of government expenditure, because of an increase in government expenditure, the private investment crowds out. The pool of funds for private investment reduces. That is known as crowding out. Then another situation is crowding in, when government expenditure crowds in private investment. It means private investment is also increasing because of government expenditure. When does it happen? When government maybe focuses on say public private partnership models. Through public private partnership models, government is trying to increase the expenditure, but it is also involving the private sector. Or maybe government is doing some expenditure on roads and highways, which further reduces the logistics costs for the private sector, है ना? So government is investing in good roads and highways, है ना? तो वो भी government, what it has done is it has taken up money from this pool of funds only which is available for private purpose also, and it is investing in roads and highways. But in roads and highways, this reduces the logistic cost for the private sector, so private sector can also increase its investment. This is known as crowding in of investment. So when government expenditure reduces the funds available for private sector, it is known as crowding out of investment, crowding out of private investment. And if government expenditure helps the private sector also to increase their investment, that is known as crowding in of investment. I hope you guys have understood the meaning of these two terms. So India has to bring in a strategy which crowds in private investment, not crowds out private investment. ठीक है? Private investment is very important because only then it is going to focus on employment, sectoral diversification, innovation, and all. Plus, there are global uncertainties also. So we need to focus on private capital expenditure. So the government, the union budget should focus on, what should the government union budget should focus on? It should focus on helping out crowding in it should focus on crowding in of private investment. Okay, fine. Then we have this small news that foreign investment in India, Indian real estate down 16% last year. So foreign investment has reduced in the real estate sector. It dipped to $3.65 billion from $4.32 billion. And this was just a fact kind of a news. Okay, fine though, foreign investment has reduced in the real estate sector. I am giving you a homework over here, everyone. You are going to check out the implications on the Indian economy. You're going to check out the implications on Indian economy if the foreign investment has reduced in real estate sector, then how is it going to impact the Indian economy, overall Indian economy? So check out the impact. Okay? Then energy storage installations to surge tenfold to 5 gigawatt per hour in 2026. See, a major problem in India is that on one side, our goal is that we need to shift to renewable energy. है ना? Renewable energy solutions पे we have to shift. We have to focus on transition towards renewable energy. But a few days back only we had seen that government has increased its coal capacity also. Coal capacity has been increased to generate electricity. Why was this happening? Is because even though if we produce renewable energy, the major problem was on energy storage, that we did not have enough energy storage, battery energy storage systems हमारे पास अच्छे नहीं है, because of which this renewable energy cannot be stored, because of which our reliance on coal increased. So there was conflicting problems. On one side we wanted to attain our emission goals, on one side we have emission goals, and on the other side we had to focus on energy security also, energy security for the people. There was a trade off between the two. We were not able to fulfill this. On one side we wanted to focus on emission goals, on the other side we were focusing on energy security also. So the major solution for that is that we should improve our battery energy storage systems. We need to improve our battery energy storage system so that more and more energy can be utilized. So that is why we have brought this change, is that in 2026 the India will see nearly 10-fold jump to battery energy storage capacity addition. ठीक है, from 507 megawatt per hour in 2025 to 5 gigawatt per hour in 2026. This is the news over here. I hope this is clear. Apart from that, this India ratings and research, it projects India's GDP growth at 6.9% in financial year 27. Sometimes directly in the MCQ they can ask, so you should know. They can ask you in the statement that according to uh, um, India Ratings and Research, it has projected financial year 27 growth to 6.9%. And why they have predicted it for financial year 27 6.9%? Because of this Goldilocks period. I hope this Goldilocks period is clear, where growth is also good and inflation is also controlled. ठीक है? Then we have this new this also small news over here, that Indian Rice Exporters Federation, they urge the government to provide tax incentives and interest subvention. ठीक है? So for promoting the exports of rice, these exporters, they may get 4% interest subvention on export credit. So if they take up credit for export purposes, they will get it at a less rate of interest. ठीक है? Then India census 2027 phase 1 work in April to September. So देखो, census was supposed to be held in 2021, है ना? हमारा census 2021 में होना था, but because of COVID we delayed this census, and now next year April to September we are going to have this census over here. ठीक है? So phase 1 of census 2027, it will be between April 1 and September 30. Sometimes you should be knowing this timeline. ठीक है? Population enumeration will be conducted February 27. Caste data will also be included over here. Plus, electronically, we are going to have the data. Originally, it was planned for 2021, but because of COVID-19, we had extended it. ठीक है? Caste census, the most important factor of the census 2027 is that for the first time after, the last caste census was done in 1881 to 1931, उसके बाद caste census नहीं किया, तो here we are going to have caste census also. ठीक है? This is the largest administrative statistical exercise which happens, है ना? It happens after 10 years. It is a decadal exercise, है ना? And this time India's first digital census will be conducted for the first time. These are some important articles. ठीक है? Then faster financial year 26 GDP growth likely, nominal GDP below goal. See, we need to understand here, we need to understand the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP. ठीक है, real GDP and nominal GDP. Real GDP, basically nominal GDP is when we do not subtract inflation from it. So from your nominal GDP, if we subtract inflation, what do we get? Real GDP. है ना? If inflation is going to be less na, the nominal GDP is also going to be less. And in India, what was the scenario? That inflation has reduced a lot in our country, है ना? Inflation has moderated in our country, because of which हमारी nominal growth at current prices, growth at current prices is less as compared to real GDP. ठीक है? So India's GDP growth for financial year 26 projected at 7.4%. And nominal GDP projected at 8%. Usually it stays around 10%. Nominal GDP growth stays around 10%, but it has reduced because inflation has reduced. है ना? Fine. ठीक है, so real GDP, nominal GDP, I hope that the difference is clear to all of you. ठीक है, यहाँ पे there is this concept, real GDP, output adjusted for inflation, output not adjusted for inflation is nominal GDP. ठीक है, yes, lowest since COVID-19. Yes, 6 cents, absolutely correct, है ना? GDP deflator is, हम GDP deflator का क्या मतलब है? When we use the this nominal and real GDP to calculate inflation. Usually हम inflation को calculate करने के लिए we use indicators like CPI, WPI and all, है ना? Wholesale price index, consumer price index and all. But when we do not use inflation specific indices, and we use this nominal GDP relationship to find out the inflation dynamics, that is known as GDP deflator. So nominal GDP upon real GDP into 100 is known as your GDP deflator. तो इससे हमें इन्फ्लेशन का सिनेरियो पता चल जाता है. Fine, I hope this is clear. Then this is a very small article over here, or you can say small data over here, that maximum जो इंडिया का बजट है, where is that budget used? So you can see over here that maximum is used by the finance ministry and defense. So so you just need to know, this was just a fact, you need to know that out of the total budget, maximum, you can say out of the total budget, maximum goes to the finance ministry and then for the defense. These are the top two areas where our budget goes. ठीक है, just for general purposes, this basic thing is here. ठीक है, fine. So I hope that all of these news articles were clear to you. You guys can connect with me on Telegram if there's any doubt, if you want to ask any particular thing. I will share the PDF over here. Okay? You can just type Mannat Educated. You will have access to my Telegram account. I will share the PDF of the class over there. Okay? And let's practice a few MCQs. I hope that you guys have understood whatever we have done. इसी तरह से you guys also have to read the newspaper. Fine. First question, assertion reason question. Nominal GDP growth for financial year 26 is projected to be lower than real GDP growth. Reason, inflationary pressures have softened since financial year 24. A and B, A and R both true. R explains A and R both true. R does not explain A. A true, R false. A false, R true. What is the question? What is the answer over here? हाँ जी. Nominal GDP growth for financial year 26 is projected to be lower than real GDP growth. Why? Because inflationary pressures have softened since financial year 24. What is the correct answer for first question? A false, R true? The correct answer is A हुई. How can you say first is false? अभी तो हमने पढ़ा in this article, in the second last article only we saw that nominal inflation is below the goal. Nominal inflation is below the goal. है ना? अच्छा यहाँ पे लिखा है, अच्छा is projected to be lower than real GDP growth. Absolutely correct. D नहीं हो सकता, A नहीं हो सकता है इसका आंसर, है ना? The answer is D only. Very good. Here they have written nominal GDP growth for financial year 26 is projected to be lower than the real GDP growth. No, it is not going to be lower than the real GDP growth. है ना? D is absolutely correct everyone. Real GDP से तो नहीं कब होगा? Nominal GDP वैसे it is going to be slower than projected, but not less than the real GDP growth. है ना? ठीक है. Yes, yes, it is real than the. हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल absolutely correct. So this answer is not A over here. Answer is D. Very good. Consider the following incorrect statement regarding India Census 2027. Phase 1. Census 2027 Phase 1 house listing will be conducted between 1st April and 30th September 2026. Population enumeration for Census 2027 will be done in the month of February. Census 27 will allow a 15 days self enumeration period. All are correct. Incorrect statement ढूंढना है इसमें से. Second question. हाँ जी, quickly give me the answer. सुरेखा, Six Sense, भक्ति, तन्मय, आयुषी, हेमा, सौविक, शरत. What is the answer? Sharath says D. Anybody else would like to answer? Second question. Correct answer is D. All are correct. Consider the following assertion and reason. Assertion is that private corporate investment in India has remained subdued despite a surge in public capital expenditure because private firms face uncertainty over long term tax policy, trade regulations, credit access, especially for long gestation projects. Both A and R are true. R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true, but R is not the correct explanation. A true, R false. A false, R true. Question number 3. हाँ जी. What is the answer? अच्छा यहाँ पे अगेन देव रिटन क्वेश्चन 2 है ना. चलो क्वेश्चन 3 है ये. Absolutely correct, all of you. So correct answer is A, because private corporate investment in India has reduced. That is what we saw. Yes, why? Because they have uncertainty over long term tax policy, trade regulations and all, and this should be addressed in the union budget to solve this problem. On 5th January 2026, India's daily average crude price dipped to dash per barrel, the lowest in nearly 5 years. India saved around billion dollars on crude import bill on an annualized basis during April to November 25-26. In volume terms, crude imports increased 2.44% to dash million tons in April to November 2025 from 159.5 million tons last year. What is the answer for question number 4? अब इसमें क्या बोल रहे हैं दैट इंडियन बास्केट क्रूड प्राइस रिड्यूस टू डैश पर बैरल इज इट 59.29 per barrel 57.29 55.29 or 50.29 and then India saved around how many billion dollars 11 billion dollars 10 9 or 5 billion dollars and तीसरा है that crude imports increased 2.44% to dash billion tons 163.4 million tons 153 164.4 and 155 million tons. The correct answer is A, 59.29 dollars per barrel, 11 billion dollars per barrel, 163.4 million tons. ठीक है? Next question. Which institution hears appeals against SEBI orders? SEBI orders के against. ठीक है? National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, Supreme Court, Securities Appellate Tribunal, Competition Commission of India. Six Sense, is it buffering even now? Was it buffering in today's session? Please, can anybody else also let me know whether it was buffering in between today? Was the session buffering today in today's class? Others, can you please confirm? Hemai Singh, my video was fine. Tanmay Singh, a little bit. Bhakti Singh, yes, थोड़ा थोड़ा. Okay. अच्छा. चलो next time से I will check it out. बीच में जब हो रहा था you could have told me, I could have checked. है ना? चलो I will from next time I will check it out. Okay? Don't worry. Okay, okay, I will check. Chalo, which institution hears appeals against SEBI orders? It is the Securities Appellate Tribunal, not NC, not NCLAT, or you can say National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, not this, but the Securities Appellate Tribunal. ठीक है, SAT है. Securities Appellate Tribunal है specifically for SEBI. This is for this National Company Law Appellate Tribunal is for the company's law. पता नहीं आपने ये क्यों uh, why did you select this? ठीक है, फाइन. तो सी है. अच्छा, एवरीबडी सिलेक्टेड सी ओनली है ना. किसी ने बी भी कहा था. ओके, चलो. Which of the following best defines evergreening in pharma patents? Licensing generics before patent expiry, extending patents through minor drug modifications, manufacturing drugs without IP rights, reverse engineering for patent challenges. Question number 6 है ये, है ना, 6th question. Which of the following best defines evergreening? What did I say? What is evergreening? If there's this particular drug, what do we do is we've got a patent for 20 years. We're going to give in some very small modifications or very minor modifications in this drug to extend the patent life, है ना. So yes, B is the correct answer. ठीक है. Match the economic drivers in column A with their description in column B. ठीक है. So we have consumption, public capex, private capex, macroeconomic stability on left side. Column B, long term infrastructure spending, demand boosted by tax relief and GST rationalization, revival in investment by corporates, helps economy absorb external shocks. You have to match these with each other. 7th question. हाँ, यस मयंक, यू आर एब्सोल्युटली राइट. काफी टाइम हो गया है. आरबीआई का रिजल्ट अब आ जाना चाहिए. मे बी मे बी इन द नेक्स्ट 2-3 days आ जाए आपका रिजल्ट. इवन आई डोंट नो इट, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ एम्बिग्विटी इन दिस केस, है ना. चलो, 7th क्वेश्चन, व्हाट इज द आंसर? मैच करो सब. करेक्ट आंसर इज ए. वेरी गुड. सो कंजम्पशन डिमांड इज कंजम्पशन की डिमांड कैसे बूस्ट होगी? अगर हम टैक्स रिलीफ लेकर आएंगे, जीएसटी रिलेशनशिप, जीएसटी रैशनलाइजेशन लेकर आएंगे, है ना. तो ये हो गया. पब्लिक कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर लीड्स टू लॉन्ग टर्म इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर स्पेंडिंग, है ना. पब्लिक कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, है ना. अब प्राइवेट कैपेक्स, रिवाइवल इन इन्वेस्टमेंट बाय कॉर्पोरेट्स, macroeconomic stability helps economy absorb external shocks, right. If domestic steel prices rise due to safeguard duties and input cost inflation, what immediate effect is most likely? Compression of margins for domestic steel makers, reduced attractiveness of steel imports, sharp increase in steel overcapacity, appreciation of the rupee. If because of safeguard duties domestic steel prices rise, and input cost inflation also rises, what immediate effect is going to be there? Compression of margins for domestic steel makers, reduced attractiveness of steel imports, sharp increase in steel overcapacity, appreciation of the rupee. Bhakti says B, Tanish says B, absolutely correct. अब देखो, अगर imports के ऊपर हम duties लगा देंगे, we put taxes on imports, so obviously imports are going to be less attractive and we are going to focus on domestic manufacturers only, है ना. Safeguard duties on flat steel products. Safeguard duties on flat steel products announced on 30th December will be levied for years starting at -% in the first year. जो safeguard duty है, how much percent in the first year? For how many years? 3 years 12%, 2 years 10%, 1 year 8%, 4 years 12%. Question number 9. So safeguard duties will be levied for how many years? And in the first year, what is going to be the percentage? Right, absolutely correct. 3 years, 12%. 10th question. Recent steel price increases in India were driven mainly by expansion in domestic capacity, leading to excess supply, safeguard duty on imports and higher input cost, appreciation of rupee, ban on steel imports from China. Easy question. We've already done this, na? Similar type of question. 10th question. Quickly, why did we see an increase in the steel prices? Was it because capacity increased? So there is excess supply because of safeguard duty, because of appreciation of rupee, or because of ban on steel imports? Absolutely correct. B is the correct answer. Safeguard duty on imports. Which of the following best describes the role of NBFC MFIs in India's financial system? They provide large corporate loans at preferential rates. They act as deposit taking institutions for rural households. They provide small ticket credit to low income and unbanked segments. They regulate the microfinance sector under RBI. Absolutely correct. They provide small ticket credit to low income and unbanked segments. ठीक है? So that is all from my side, everyone. I hope that this session was helpful to all of you. You can connect with me beyond these sessions. Manat Educator is my Telegram handle. You can connect with me here, and I will share the PDF also of this class over here. Fine. I hope everything is clear. I hope that this session was beneficial for all of you. I will see you all in my next class. Right. Till then, keep studying and wish you all the best. I will see you all in my next one. Okay, Tanmay. Okay, Bhakti. Chalo. If there's any doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, bye everyone. See you all in my next class. Okay, Bhakti. Thank you, Tanishq, Ayushi. Of course, Six Sense. है ना? चलिए. Have a good day, everyone.